Hi, class. So I'm going to make an effort to sort of combine a lecture based and fill in some of the details that we're missing, and then also provide you with some um, additional recordings that I might find online. So this week's lecture will be a mixture of those. I did want to start off talking about some of the group concepts that we may have missed at the beginning of the process. So let me see if I can advance our slides. Here we go. Okay, so I know we've talked a little bit about ethics as we got into this, but I wanted to take a look at how ethics might be different related to groups than it would be with individuals. So, of course, we want to start off with an informed consent. And so take a moment and think, what goes into an informed consent? What would you want an individual or group members to know about going into a group process? So your informed consent might include things like a written documentation about the procedures, how to go about getting into the group, what is the purpose of the group, what are the goals. It would include things such as confidentiality and the limitations of that. Who is the group leader? What are the qualifications of the group leader? What type of members might be engaged in the group? What are the expectations for participation? And what are some of the members' rights? So there's just a few things that you'd want to consider as you entered into informed consent starting off your group. Something that we haven't talked about as much is this concept of pressure. So in a group concept, you have multiple members, obviously, and so there might be some pressure from other members or just from simply being in the group to feel as though that they have to disclose or conform. So on one hand, they might feel if every other member is disclosing information that they should be sharing as well. And we certainly want them to disclose, but we want to make sure that they disclose as they feel appropriate and when they're ready to do so. And so they might experience pressure from other members too. So one member might say, hey, you haven't been talking, it's your turn. And so it's our job as facilitators to balance that. Ensure that the safety is and trust in the group is maintained. On the other end of that pressure might be some sense of conformity as well. So, for example, if everybody is feeling like some pressure or anxiety, and one particular member might not be feeling that, they may not want to share that they don't feel that way, so that they don't feel different from other group members. So, that's another way that pressure can be internal or external. And so again, we as facilitators, we have to really use our skills in terms of body language to see how members might be feeling related to feeling of pressure to disclose, to conform, to contribute. We always want to keep the group safe for all members. And then lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about confidentiality. Certainly, we know what confidentiality is, and we've already practiced it a little bit in our group process. So confidentiality can look just a little bit different in group because you're not dealing with just one person. It's much easier to maintain that safe container within looking at just one person. But now we're having to address 5 or 6 different members, and it makes the process of confidentiality much more challenging. So it's important that we share that right at the forefront. First, that it's a safe space and the idea of when we might break confidentiality, but also ensuring that letting the members know that it is harder to keep this container safe or confidential. And because we don't have as much control over other members within the group. So to help maintain the confidentiality, first and foremost, ensure that we're talking about it at the beginning. And then if there comes a point in time where you have learned that confidentiality may have been broken, make sure that we address that, right? So that we can bring it to the group members for discussion. That might be something in particular that you may hear in an adolescent group. You may hear rumors or concern that other members are talking about what happened in the group or about specific members. So it's okay to bring that to the group context. The next concept that we'll talk about are group dynamics. So these are the contributing factors that result in whether are positive or negative contributions within our group. So these talk about the interactions amongst group members. that help to promote socio-emotional needs within the group context. So as I mentioned, it could be positive group dynamics or negative group dynamics. And we've all been engaged or involved in groups that have been beneficial toward our growth and our well-being, and maybe sometimes groups that we didn't feel as comfortable contributing or sharing with. So there's 4 things that contribute to group dynamics. I'll share those. The first one is revolves around communication and interaction patterns. So communication is just as we have learned about it in lab class. So we're going to be looking at both what is being said and what is not being said. So we want to pay attention to nonverbal communication. So if we see members that maybe are eye rolling or crunching up their face or feeling like they're kind of pushing their chair back, that could be indications that we might not be having positive group dynamics, or a particular person does not feel comfortable in terms of sharing. On the other hand, we do also want to pay attention to what exactly is being said as well. So what are the members saying? Are they being silent? Are they contributing? But also what it is underlying those messages. So are they communicating in ways that they feel like is expected by the facilitator or the group members? Or are they contributing because they have something they want to share? A second concept that relates to positive group dynamics is the idea of social integration and influence. So that relates back to our theory that we talked about, how the social dynamics in the group can contribute to individuals feeling safe, feeling like they want to participate, and how groups function. So this is the idea of how members fit together and are accepted. Some things that go into social integration are what we would talk about are the norms of the group. So these are the shared expectations about how members should act or not act. Some of these are explicit, so they might be very specific that the group starts at 5 o'clock, and if you're late, then you should not participate. So they might be tie into our rules as well. But these might also just be underlying implicit norms, more so things like social disapproval. So maybe it's frowned upon that you're late, but it's still okay. It's not necessarily a rule. There could be some other implicit norms, such as maybe you're able to bring snacks, or you're able to be more casual in the group dynamic. So what are the norms of the group? What are the expectations? Some of those are going to be set through your rules or the role of the facilitator, and some of those are going to be established along the way as the group becomes comfortable with one another. The other piece of social integration is starting to assess what are the roles of different group members. So how is power divided? How is who is talking more in the group? Who do we pay attention to when they speak? What are some of the expectations for group members? Is it okay to sit back and be quiet? Or is the expectation that everybody speaks? We want to pay attention with this regard to who is sort of noticed in the group. So if one particular member speaks up and everybody else comments on that particular group member, that group member may inherently be given power, right? Because what they said is valued. On the other hand, if somebody speaks up and nobody kind of comments or piggybacks on what they say, then they may feel less validated or less likely to contribute to the conversation. The last piece of group dynamics. Okay, and so the last piece I wanted to share with you, it relates to cohesion. And so I've uploaded this tiny little YouTube piece to help illustrate that part of group dynamics.
We work together on something common. We're trying to make sure that we have some structured pattern of communication, and we have that collective identity. So these things tells us we have a cohesive group. We also have some factors that will impact whether or not the group will be cohesive. So the question is, are we going to like each other and have camaraderie or not? So these factors that you see here on the left side say if we have these things in the group, we're more likely to be cohesive, meaning we have a higher degree of camaraderie, we have a higher degree of liking being together within the group. So similarity is the first one. So the more similar we are to each other in terms of whatever, education, skills, maybe age, maybe our gender, our attitudes, whatever, values, beliefs, the more similar we are to each other, the more cohesive we tend to be. We also have stability, which is the second one. So stability means tenure, the extent to which or the degree to which we are together for a long amount of time. So the longer a group stays together, the more cohesive it will become. So just spending time together means we're going to be cohesive. The third one is size. Size matters and smaller is better. Large groups tend to break into subgroups, so smaller groups tend to have higher levels of cohesion because we can get to know each other a little bit better. The fourth one is whether or not we are encouraged to actually support each other. So the fourth one is support. Whether we receive coaching, whether we are encouraged to support each other, the more we do that, the more group identity we will have, and we will have higher levels of cohesion. And lastly, we have satisfaction with team members. So cohesion is also correlated to how much we like being each other. So if I think you're a great performer, you have great behavior and actions, you have a pleasant attitude, we all conform to group norms, we're all satisfied. The more satisfied we are with each other, the more we will be cohesive. But clearly, cohesion is just not great. The more we have that strong group identity, we identify as one group, we like hanging out with each other, we're also less likely to question each other. So when somebody says something that doesn't sit quite right with you, you don't want to rock the boat. So you don't say anything. And that is when we get groupthink. Groupthink is this group pressure phenomenon that increases the risk of us making bad decisions. Because now I like you and I don't want to hurt your feelings and I don't want to hurt the identity of the group. So I'm not going to say anything. So that means that people get away with not making the best decisions. And we call this groupthink. It increases the risk of us making bad decisions. We're allowing reductions in what's called mental efficiency, reality testing, and moral judgment. We don't test our decisions against reality. We don't make our best judgment. And we're not really being mentally sharp. We're not being the best we can when groupthink kicks in. So we have to pay attention to, are we actually letting people get away with things they should not be getting away with just because we like each other? And lastly is the effectiveness of groups. So we have here on our left side of the screen, we're going to pick a different color for this one. Blue works great. We have our extent to which we have cohesion. So here we don't have a lot of cohesion. We have low levels of camaraderie. Here we have high group cohesion. So when we are in a situation where we have low task commitment, meaning low performance norms, nobody really feels that they need to work very much, and we have high cohesion, guess what happens? Yep, we're just going to hang out, we're going to chat, we're going to drink coffee, nothing happens. And obviously, low group cohesion, we don't even like each other, and we don't feel like we have to work. We just show up and we sit on our phones and we don't pay attention. However, if you have high task commitment, we know we need to get the job done and we like each other. That's going to be the best place to be. We like each other. We know we have to get work done. You're going to have the highest level of commitment. So high group cohesion and high task commitment, best place to be. All right, that's going to wrap.
All right, folks, we're just about out of time as well. So that is our short snippet on group dynamics. And I apologize, this is my first attempt at videotaping, so we'll get better as we go. Our next video is going to talk about leadership. Thanks for sticking in there with me.